Ask your grandmother or any old person you can find about what they feared as kids. If they're old enough, they might tell you about kids who went swimming and came home paralyzed, about babies who suffocated slowly because their throats closed up, about teenagers whose backs arched so violently from muscle spasms that their spines snapped. Fortunately, we don't have to deal with these things anymore. Most people under 40 have never even seen someone die from an infectious disease we have a vaccine for. And that's incredible, but it's also created this dangerous situation where we've completely forgotten what we're protected from. For example, smallpox killed more people than every war in human history combined. Every war, every battle, every conflict. Estimates suggest smallpox killed between 300 and 500 million people just in the 20th century. That's almost the entire current US population. When people got smallpox, the fever would hit first. Then the rash and small red spots turning into blisters filled with pus covering their entire bodies. They'd practically merge into sheets of oozing sores. About 30% died in the second week of an infection when lesions would have covered their airways and they would have drowned in their own fluids. Survivors, on the other hand, would have deep pitted scars all over, and many of them went blind from eye lesions. A 2-year-old girl in Bangladesh named Rahima Banu became the last person to naturally contract deadly smallpox in 1975 and survive it. Before vaccination campaigns began, smallpox had killed thousands of children every year in that region. Now, how did vaccines and vaccination even come to be a thing? The word vaccine comes from the Latin word for cow, vacca. In 1796, Edward Jenner, an English physician and scientist, noticed that milkmaids who got cowpox didn't get smallpox. So he took pus from a cowpox blister and scratched it into an 8-year-old boy's arm. 6 weeks later, he then deliberately, emphasized deliberately, infected the boy with actual smallpox, and the kid didn't get sick. That experiment would, of course, be completely illegal now, but it worked at the time. Unfortunately, it would take almost 200 years until 1980 for the World Health Organization to declare smallpox eradicated. To date, it remains the only human disease we've completely wiped out. Rabies, on the other hand, is probably the most terrifying disease that still exists. With rabies, if a person gets bitten and they don't vaccinate immediately, their survival chance once symptoms start is essentially zero. They get anxious and confused, they can't swallow water because their throat muscles spasm violently, and that's where hydrophobia steps in. They become afraid of water because drinking causes unbearable pain. Then hallucinations come around, paralysis, and death. Louis Pasteur developed the rabies vaccine in the 1880s, and the first person he used it on was a 9-year-old boy named Joseph Meister, bitten 14 times by a rabid dog. The dog's owner had to pull the animal off him, as a matter of fact. Pasteur gave him the experimental vaccine over several days, and the boy lived. Today, more than 29 million people worldwide get post-exposure rabies vaccination yearly. That's 29 million who would have died without that vaccine. Now, if you really want to understand what we've forgotten as a people, how about we take a look at polio? In the early 1950s, American parents were terrified every summer because that was when polio usually spread and nobody knew how. In 1952 alone, the U.S. had almost 58,000 cases of the disease, 3,000 died, and 21,000 were left paralyzed. So, of course, parents kept their kids inside, closed pools, and canceled gatherings. It was that bad, but how exactly did the disease function? Well, first, the disease would attack the nervous system. Most people got flu-like symptoms, but in about 1% the virus would destroy nerve cells controlling muscles. So kids went to bed healthy and woke up unable to move their legs or arms, or they woke up unable to breathe because the muscles controlling their diaphragm stopped working. That's where the iron lung came in. They were these massive metal cylinders enclosing your entire body except your head. It would make pumps, which in turn created negative pressure, forcing a person's lungs to expand and contract because they couldn't breathe on their own. People lived in iron lungs for years, some for decades. There's a man named Paul Alexander who lived in an iron lung for over 70 years until he died in 2024. His offense was getting polio in 1952 at age 6, 70 years in a metal tube because a virus destroyed his breathing nerves. Just terrible. The polio vaccine came out in 1955, and within 2 years, cases dropped 90% in countries that used it. By 1979, polio was eliminated in the United States, and Europe declared it eradicated in 2002. But it still exists today in Afghanistan and Pakistan because of disrupted vaccination campaigns. In those regions, polio is still paralyzing children, and we can't get vaccines to them. Tetanus is even worse because of how it kills you. That's right, the low-grade tetanus your mother tells you to get a shot for used to be a rampant killer. Once tetanus got a hold of someone, the bacteria would produce a toxin attacking their nervous system, causing uncontrollable muscle contractions. Their jaws would lock shut first, that's called lockjaw. Then spasms would spread to their whole body. Their backs would arch backwards so severely that people's spines would fracture from their own muscle contractions while they're fully conscious the whole time. The spasms would trigger from light, sound, or touch. Even a breeze could set them off. Of course, people eventually died from exhaustion because these contractions never stopped, or they'd suffocate when the spasms affected their breathing muscles. Tetanus still kills about 35,000 people per year globally, almost all in developing countries with low vaccination rates. That's 35,000 people still dying from something we've been able to prevent since the 1940s. But in the end, what really gets me is this. We've been so successful in eliminating these diseases that people now think vaccines are more dangerous than the diseases. How exactly did that happen? In wealthy countries where nobody's seen a child die from smallpox or watched someone's back break from tetanus, there's this growing movement refusing to vaccinate children. I get it to some extent. When you've never seen these diseases, when they're just abstract historical things, it's easy to think maybe they weren't that bad. Maybe our natural immunity is just better now than it was in those days. But we have to realize it's only possible for us to think that because vaccines worked so well at the needed time and now, our generation could grow up never witnessing what these diseases actually do. Look at COVID, for example. We developed vaccines in record time that prevented millions of deaths globally, but because they were developed quickly, people were skeptical. COVID killed over 7 million people according to WHO estimates. That's 7 million people even with massive modern containment efforts, and even with vaccines that came relatively quickly. Imagine we didn't have these things. In communities where vaccination rates dropped, we're currently seeing outbreaks of diseases that were essentially gone. Measles cases are coming back, whooping cough is coming back, and they're all happening in areas with low vaccination rates. You can beat a court case, you can beat the S&P 500, you can even beat the system if you like, but you cannot beat facts and math, which means when vaccination rates drop below a certain threshold, expect herd immunity to break down. People who genuinely can't be vaccinated, babies too young for vaccines, people with compromised immune systems, they become suddenly vulnerable, all because of a person's choice not to get with the program. The cruelest thing about these diseases is that they're completely unnecessary deaths to begin with. Simply put, every single person who dies from tetanus or measles in 2026 dies for no reason because we have the tools to prevent it. We've proven the vaccines work. We've eliminated or nearly eliminated these diseases in countries with high vaccination rates. So the suffering is optional at this point, and we're one generation of complacency away from bringing back diseases that killed millions. Some people alive today remember what it was like when you couldn't trust that your kids would make it to adulthood. We've forgotten all of that, and forgetting it might be the most dangerous thing we've done. Prevention requires constant effort, and it requires not getting complacent just because we don't see these diseases anymore. If anything, their invisibility is not proof that they're not dangerous, it is proof that vaccines work. And the moment we forget that, the moment we let our guard down, they'll remind us exactly what we were protected from all along.